During a stuffy dinner, an ordinary waitress turns heads when she makes an unlikely mistake. What starts with broken glasses and awkward silence soon sparks a quiet revolution that will change two lives forever. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll keep you posted. The silence that hung over the mansion's main hall was almost palpable, interrupted only by the soft clink of silverware and restrained whispers. It was another one of those formal dinners that Gabriel despised so much, but which he could not avoid. Not as chairman of the board of the Allen Group, even if his legs no longer responded to the commands his brain insisted on sending. The waiter had just served the first appetizer when the inevitable happened. One of the temporary waitresses, hired especially for the event, tripped over her own feet. The tray she was carrying slipped from her hands as if it had a life of its own, spilling champagne flutes across the imported Persian carpet. The golden liquid formed small puddles that reflected the light from the crystal chandeliers, creating a spectacle that, under other circumstances, might even have been considered beautiful. But there was no beauty in the look of contempt that Heloise, the matriarch of the family, gave the young woman. The waitress, a woman of no more than 30 with brown hair tied in a makeshift bun and calloused hands that betrayed a life of hard work, did not flinch, as one would expect. Instead, she straightened her posture and began to clean up the mess, with a dignity that caught Gabriel's attention. "Let the cleaning crew take care of this," Heloise's sharp voice rang through the hall. "You've caused enough trouble for today." That was when it happened. The waitress looked up, meeting Gabriel's gaze. There was no submissiveness there, no shame. There was something else, something he hadn't seen in a long time. Authenticity. For a brief moment, time seemed to freeze. The world around him, with its Persian rugs, crystal glasses, and stifling protocol, vanished. "I appreciate your concern, ma'am." Her voice was firm but respectful. "But I'd rather clean up my own mess." Gabriel watched as she finished picking up the broken glass, ignoring the disapproving looks from the guests. Her name, he would later learn, was Helena Santos. She wasn't just another temporary waitress. She was a pastry chef, specializing in artisanal sweets, who took on extra jobs to supplement her income. A woman who, like so many others in Brazil, balanced on a tightrope between her dreams and her needs. Dinner continued, as if nothing had happened, but something had changed. Gabriel couldn't get the image of that woman out of his mind, her silent dignity, the strength contained in every gesture. It was a stark contrast to the artificial environment in which he lived, where smiles were calculated and every word was measured with surgical precision. In the days that followed, Gabriel found himself thinking about that moment more often than he cared to admit. His life, since the accident that had left him confined to a wheelchair, had become a series of corporate meetings, physical therapy sessions, and social events that he tolerated only out of obligation. The Allen business empire demanded his presence, even as his soul was increasingly absent. It was during one of these tedious meetings that the idea came to mind. The group was about to demolish an old mansion in the Liberdade neighborhood of São Paulo to make way for yet another commercial venture. The property, an early 20th century building with an Art Deco facade, had been abandoned for years and was only a loss on the financial statements. "Call off the demolition," he ordered, interrupting the new business director's presentation. "I have other plans for that space." It wasn't hard to find Helena. São Paulo, despite its continental size, had surprisingly small social circles. She was working in a small bakery in Brás, creating custom sweets and dreaming of the day she would have her own place. The meeting was scheduled at the mansion itself. Helena arrived punctually, wearing simple jeans and a white blouse, her hair loose, framing a face that needed no makeup to convey strength. Gabriel was waiting for her on the ground floor, his wheelchair contrasting with the old wooden floors. "Why did you call me here?" she asked bluntly after the initial greetings. "Because this place needs life," Gabriel replied, gesturing to the space around them, "and you need a place to make your dreams come true." Helena looked around the room with a critical eye, assessing every detail. The peeling walls told stories of decades of neglect, but the structure was solid. The large windows allowed natural light to enter, and the location was privileged. "And what's the catch?" she asked, turning to face him. "People like you don't usually give to charity without a reason." Gabriel couldn't help but smile. There it was again, that authenticity that had captured him in the first moment. No tricks. The property belongs to the group, but it's not being used. You can transform it into whatever you want, as long as you keep the original facade. We can establish an initial loan agreement with a future purchase option. "My way," she stated, not as a question but as a condition. "Your way," he agreed. Helena walked through the space again, this time more slowly, as if she could already visualize the necessary transformations. Her fingers touched the old walls with reverence, and her eyes shone when she saw the old industrial kitchen, abandoned but still imposing. "Why me?" she finally asked, her voice softer. "There are dozens of chefs more experienced with more resources." "Because you weren't afraid to clean up your own mess," Gabriel replied simply. The silence that followed was different from that of dinner. It was not filled with judgment or expectations, but with possibilities. Helena looked out the window, observing the movement on the street, the constant flow of people passing by, without knowing that, at that moment, a story was beginning. "I'm going to need time," she said finally, "and a very well-written contract." "How much time do you need?" "To turn this all around," she gestured broadly. 3 months minimum, and I'll keep my current job during the renovation." Gabriel nodded. "I can get the contract done by the end of the week. And as for the renovation—" "No," she interrupted him. "If I'm going to do this, it's going to be on my own resources. I may not have much, but I do have some savings, and I'd rather start small than owe favors." That answer surprised and pleased him in equal measure. It was refreshing to find someone who wasn't interested in taking advantage of her position or fortune. Helena was there for the space, the opportunity, but she wasn't willing to bow down or lose her essence in the process. "As you wish," he agreed, "but let me at least point you to some trusted professionals for the structural work. The building is old, and we need to ensure its safety." Helena considered the proposal for a moment before nodding. It was a reasonable compromise, a first demonstration that it might be possible to build a bridge between their very different worlds. As he watched Helena scribble notes in a small notebook she'd pulled from her bag, Gabriel felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time: hope, not just for the project itself, but for the possibility that perhaps there was more to life than financial reports and family expectations. The afternoon sun streamed through the dusty windows, creating beams of light that danced across the space. Outside, São Paulo continued its frenetic pace, oblivious to the small revolution that was beginning within those ancient walls. A revolution that would begin with flour, sugar, and eggs, but that promised to transform much more than just an abandoned mansion. "I have to get back to work," Helena announced, putting away her notebook. "But first I have to tell you something. Don't expect me to change my way of being or working to please your family or friends." Gabriel smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I wouldn't expect anything different. That's exactly why I chose you." She nodded, a small smile playing on her lips, and walked towards the exit. Before she left, however, she turned one last time. "Do you know how to make cornbread?" The question caught him off guard. "Actually, I've never eaten." "Then get ready," she replied, an amused glint in her eye, "because that's the first thing I'm going to do when this place is up and running." And with those words, she departed, leaving behind a man who, for the first time in a long time, had something to look forward to beyond his daily obligations. The empty mansion seemed to vibrate with possibility, as if the very walls knew they were about to witness the beginning of something extraordinary. Gabriel remained there for a few more minutes, his wheelchair parked by the window, watching the movement on the street. People hurried past, each carrying their own stories, their own dreams and disappointments. Soon, some of them would stop there, attracted by the aromas emanating from that kitchen, without having any idea that each, a sweet treat, would be more than just a dessert. It would be an act of resistance, a declaration of independence, proof that sometimes the best new beginnings are born from the most unlikely encounters. The following weeks brought a gradual transformation to the old mansion. Helena had assembled a small team of local professionals, people she knew from the neighborhood and trusted. The walls were cleaned and painted, while retaining original features like the Portuguese tiles in the kitchen. The hardwood floors were refinished, revealing intricate patterns that had been hidden by decades of neglect. Gabriel visited the site frequently, more than was necessary for simple project supervision. He told himself it was just to make sure everything was running smoothly. But the truth was that these visits had become the most anticipated part of his days. He watched Helena oversee the renovation with the same precision with which she created her suites, each decision meticulously thought out. One afternoon, he found her sitting in what would be the future main hall, surrounded by fabric samples for curtains and furniture catalogues. Her face was stained with paint, and there was flour in her hair. She still kept her job at the Bra Bakery, running between the two places as if the hours of the day were elastic. "Shouldn't I be in a board meeting?" she asked without looking up from her catalogues, a smile playing on her lips. "I cancelled," he replied, maneuvering his chair closer. "I thought you might need an opinion on curtains." Helena finally looked at him, one eyebrow raised in amused skepticism. "Gabriel Allen, the business tycoon, knows about decorating." "No," he admitted with a smile, "but I know about coffee, and you look like you could use some." That was how they ended up at the little bakery on the corner, a family-run establishment that had bravely resisted the wave of gourmet coffee shops that was taking over the neighborhood. The coffee was strong and unpretentious, served in porcelain cups with chipped rims. Helena ordered a grilled bread, and Gabriel was surprised to find that he didn't mind the curious looks from the other customers. "How is your son?" he asked, watching her add an absurd amount of butter to the bread. The question took her by surprise. She rarely spoke about Miguel, and when she did, it was always with a mixture of love and guilt that broke the hearts of those who listened. "He's fine, living with my parents in Recife, finishing high school. It's better this way." "Better for whom?" Helena set the bread down on the plate, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made him regret the question. "You wouldn't understand." "Try," he insisted softly. She sighed, running her fingers through her hair and spreading the flour even further. "When Miguel was born, I was 19 and had a lot of dreams. His father, well, he had other plans. My parents offered to raise Miguel while I studied, built a career. It was supposed to be temporary, you know, just until I settled down. But the temporary became permanent," Gabriel added. "Not by choice," she replied, her voice thick with old pain. "I tried to bring him to São Paulo many times, but I could never provide the stability he had with his grandparents. And now he's 16, with his own friends, his own life. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice." Gabriel reached across the table, lightly touching her fingers. It was an instinctive gesture, born of a genuine desire to comfort. "There are no right or wrong choices when it comes to survival, Helena." She looked down at their clasped hands but didn't pull away. "Speaking from experience?" It was his turn to be surprised. Few dared to mention his past, the circumstances that had led him to a wheelchair. It was a forbidden topic in the social circles he frequented, as if the mere mention of it could conjure up tragedy. "Maybe," he replied vaguely, withdrawing his hand. "But today isn't about me." Helena allowed the subject to change, returning to her grilled bread. The silence between them was comfortable, filled only by the hustle and bustle of the bakery and the occasional clink of cups. "I'm having a housewarming party," she announced suddenly. "Something small just for the people in the neighborhood. I want them to understand that we're not there to change the place, but to be a part of it." Gabriel nodded, understanding the strategy. The Liberdade neighborhood had a strong identity, a close-knit community. A new establishment, especially one backed by a large corporate group, could easily be seen as a threat. "Good idea," he agreed. "Want help with anything?" "Yes," she smiled, a smile that lit up her entire face. "I want you to come. No suit, no chauffeur, no pomp. Just you." The proposal caught him off guard. It was an invitation to more than a party. It was an invitation to cross the invisible line that separated their worlds. "Are you sure? I don't know if it would be appropriate." "Appropriate," she laughed. "Gabriel, you're sitting in a neighborhood bakery, eating toast from a pastry chef covered in flour. I think we're past the point of worrying about what's appropriate." He couldn't help but laugh as well, realizing the absurdity of the situation. Indeed, his life had changed subtly since that fateful dinner. Council meetings seemed duller, social events more empty. It was as if Helena had brought color to a world he hadn't even realized was black and white. "Okay," he agreed, "but on one condition." "Which?" "I want that corn cake you promised." Her smile widened. "Deal. But I'll warn you, this isn't just any cake. It's my grandmother's recipe, passed down through generations. They say that once you eat it, you'll never forget it." "Is that a threat or a promise?" "Both," she replied with a mischievous glint in her eyes. "But you'll have to find out for yourself." They finished their coffee with laughter and light teasing, like old friends reuniting after a long absence. When they left the bakery, the sun was already beginning to set, painting the São Paulo sky with shades of pink and orange that normally went unnoticed between the buildings. "I have to get back to the job site," Helena said, slinging her bag over her shoulder. "I still have to check the ovens before I go home." "Want a ride?" "No," she gently refused. "I need to keep my feet on the ground, remember? Besides, it's only 2 blocks. Gabriel watched her leave, her figure blending into the crowd heading home after another day of work. There was something special about her, something that went beyond physical beauty or baking talent. It was a rare authenticity, a strength that came not from power or money, but from the ability to face life on her own terms. His driver, who had been waiting discreetly across the street, approached in the converted van. As he was helped into the vehicle, Gabriel thought about how his life had become a series of adjustments since the accident. Physical, emotional, social adjustments. But for the first time in a long time, a change in his routine didn't feel like a burden. It felt like an adventure. The van rolled through the congested streets of São Paulo, and Gabriel found himself smiling as he thought about the opening party. He could already imagine his mother's shock when she found out he had traded an important charity dinner for a neighborhood celebration. But strangely, the prospect of disappointing others' expectations didn't bother him as much as it used to. Perhaps, he thought, it was time to make some adjustments by choice rather than necessity. And if that meant eating cornbread in a Liberty Bakery instead of canapes in marble halls, well, there were worse things in life. The opening day arrived with the typical December heat in São Paulo. Helena had spent the entire night in the kitchen, preparing a special selection of sweets that told stories through flavors. Each recipe carried a piece of her journey. The brigadeiros were the same ones she sold in college to supplement her income. The cornmeal cake had her grandmother's special touch, and the filled chocolates brought combinations she had learned in her years of study and experimentation. The mansion was unrecognizable. The walls, now in soft shades of blue and cream, were surrounded by rustic furniture made by local artisans. Small round tables occupied the main dining room, each with a simple arrangement of wildflowers. The display case, the centerpiece of the establishment, displayed a dazzling collection of artisanal sweets that looked like small works of art. The first guests began to arrive around 4 in the afternoon. They were mainly residents of the neighborhood, local merchants, some journalists from food blogs and friends Helena had made over the years. The atmosphere was welcoming, with soft music in the background and the unmistakable aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the perfume of the sweets. Gabriel arrived discreetly, as promised. He was wearing a blue polo shirt and dark pants, so different from the impeccable suits he usually wore that some guests didn't recognize him right away. His gaze sought out Helena as soon as he entered, finding her in an animated conversation with Donna Julia, the owner of the neighboring flower shop. Helena saw him and smiled, that smile that seemed to light up the entire room. She looked beautiful in a simple flowery cotton dress, her hair tied in an unpretentious bun that left a few loose strands framing her face. There was a chocolate stain on her cheek, and Gabriel felt an inexplicable urge to wipe it away with his thumb. "I thought you weren't coming," she said, approaching her chair. "And miss the famous corn cake?" "Never." "Oh, about that. She bit her lip, feigning concern. "We had a little accident with the oven, but hey, there's always the Brigadero." His look of disappointment must have been comical, because Helena burst out laughing. "I'm kidding. The cake is perfect. I saved a slice especially for you. Come on, let's go to the back porch, it's quieter there." The balcony was a small oasis of peace amidst the hustle and bustle of the party. Through the old windows, one could see the movement of the main hall, but the sound was muffled, creating a bubble of intimacy. Helena brought a generous slice of the cake still warm and a cup of coffee for each of them. "Moment of truth," she announced, watching as Gabriel picked up the first piece with his fork. The flavor took him by surprise. It wasn't just any ordinary cornbread. There was a complexity here, a harmony of flavors that spoke of memory, of affection, of stories passed down from generation to generation. "So?" Helena asked anxiously. "I think I understand. Now why they say no one forgets," he replied sincerely. "It's perfect." Her smile softened, becoming something more intimate, more genuine. "You know, this recipe has saved me many times, on the darkest days, when everything seemed to be going wrong. I would make this cake. The smell always reminded me that there was hope, that tomorrow would be another day." Gabriel put down his fork, studying her face carefully. "How do you do that?" "What is this?" "You transform everything into something special. It's not just a cake, it's a story. It's not just a bakery, it's a dream come true. You have this gift of seeing beauty where others would only see the ordinary." Helena was silent for a moment, her eyes lost in the movement of the party through the glass. "Maybe it's because I learned early on that nothing in life is guaranteed. Every good moment needs to be celebrated. Every small victory deserves its space. When you lose so much, you learn to appreciate what's left." The confession hung between them, loaded with unspoken meanings. Gabriel wanted to ask more. He wanted to understand every layer of that woman who intrigued him more and more. But before he could say anything, they were interrupted by a commotion coming from the main hall. A group of young people had entered, carrying signs with slogans such as "No speculation" and "The neighborhood is not for sale." Among them, to Helena's shock, was Miguel, her son. The tall, thin teenager with features that resembled hers was holding a camera and filming the demonstration. "Miguel!" Helena's voice was shaky. "What? How?" The boy turned at the sound of his mother's voice, and for a moment his face betrayed a mixture of emotions. Surprise, hurt, perhaps even a little embarrassment. But then his expression hardened. "So it's true," he said, his voice carrying an acidity that didn't suit his age. "You really did sell out to them." The silence that followed was deafening. The guests watched the scene with discomfort, while the protesters continued to film. Helena took a step towards her son, but he backed away. "Son, it's nothing like that. This place, this dream—" "Dream," Miguel interrupted her. "What kind of dream needs a rich businessman to come true? The same kind of dream that made you abandon me?" The words hit Helena like a slap. She staggered slightly, and Gabriel instinctively moved his chair closer, wanting to offer support even though he didn't know how. "Enough," Gabriel's voice sounded firm but controlled. "You have much to talk about, but this is neither the time nor the place." Miguel turned his camera to Gabriel, a bitter smile on his lips. "And here he is, the rich white savior who bought my mother's dignity. How much did it cost, huh? What was the price to turn a real bakery into just another gourmet spot for your rich friends?" "Miguel, please," Helena begged, silent tears streaming down her face. "Let's talk, just the two of us, I can explain." But the teenager was already leaving, followed by his companions who continued filming and shouting slogans. The damage was done. The guests began to disperse in embarrassment, and the few journalists present made no attempt to hide their interest in the dramatic turn of events. Helena stood still, staring at the door where her son had left, as if she expected him to return. Gabriel wanted to say something, anything that could ease that pain, but he knew that words would be inadequate at that moment. "I should have seen it coming," she finally said, her voice small and distant. "He's always been so intense, so passionate about social causes. Of course he would see this as a betrayal. Helen, no, she interrupted him, wiping her tears with the back of her hands. You don't have to say anything. I need a moment. She retreated to the kitchen and Gabriel respected her space. Through the half-open door, he could see her leaning against the counter, breathing deeply, trying to regain control. It was painful to watch her like this, so vulnerable, so different from the strong woman he had known. The last guests left in silence, casting sympathetic glances in the direction of the kitchen. Donna Julia, the florist, was the only one who dared to enter there, emerging a few minutes later with red eyes. "Take care of her," the lady told Gabriel before leaving. "She's stronger than you think, but even the strong need someone to lean on sometimes." The sun had already set when Helena finally emerged from the kitchen. Her eyes were puffy, but there was a renewed determination in her gaze. "Sorry for the spectacle," she said, sitting down next to Gabriel's chair. "This isn't exactly how I planned to introduce my son to—" "Ma'am, don't apologize," he replied softly. "Family is complicated. Believe me, I understand." She looked at him curiously. "Will you ever tell me your story?" "One day," he promised, "when you're ready." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the city lights begin to shine through the windows. The cornbread was still on the table, now cold and forgotten, an unintentional metaphor for how the sweetest moments could turn bitter in a matter of seconds. "You know what's funny?" Helena said, a sad smile on her lips. "For years I blamed myself for not being present in his life. I thought that by giving him a stable life with my parents, I was doing the best. But now he sees me as someone who sold out his principles for money." "He's young," Gabriel offered. "He sees the world in black and white. In time, he'll understand that there are infinite shades of grey. What if he never understands?" The question hung in the air, heavy with fear and uncertainty. Gabriel reached out, finding her hand on the table. "So you keep living, keep proving with your actions that you haven't betrayed your principles. The truth has a way of coming to light, even if it takes time." Helena laced her fingers through his, allowing herself to accept that small comfort. "Thank you for being here today, even with all this chaos." "There's no place else I'd rather be," he replied truthfully. And it was true. There, amid the remains of a ruined party, with Helena's broken heart mirroring his own unhealed scars, Gabriel realized he had found something he hadn't even known he was looking for, someone who saw him beyond the wheelchair, beyond the business empire, beyond expectations and appearances. Night fell over São Paulo, enveloping the mansion in soft shadows. Somewhere in the city, a teenager was struggling with his own truths and sorrows, and there, on that balcony, two people who had been hurt by life were beginning to understand that sometimes the most meaningful new beginnings are born from the most painful moments. The days following the inauguration brought unexpected challenges. Video of the protest went viral on social media, sparking a heated debate about gentrification and privilege. Helena's bakery, which was supposed to be just another establishment in the neighborhood, unwittingly became the symbol of a larger struggle. The first few weeks of business were less than expected. Some of the neighborhood's older residents, influenced by the controversy, avoided the place. The few customers who came in seemed more interested in taking pictures of the place for their social media than actually enjoying the sweets. Helena watched everything with a mix of concern and determination. "We have to do something," she told Gabriel during one of her regular visits. She was hunched over the kitchen counter, working on a new recipe for gourmet brigadeiro. "I can't let them turn this place into something it's not." Gabriel watched as she shaped the pastries with surgical precision, her hands moving, with the confidence of someone who knew her craft intimately. "What did you have in mind?" "Classes," she replied, her eyes never leaving her work. "I want to offer basic baking workshops to the community, affordable prices, small classes, teach what I've learned over the years." The idea was brilliant in its simplicity. It wasn't just a marketing strategy. It was a way to create real connections with the neighborhood, to show that the bakery wasn't there to exclude, but to add. "And there's more," she continued, finally looking at him. "I want to reserve some free spots for local young people. Maybe even invite Miguel to be one of the first students. The mention of her son made her voice crack slightly. Since the incident at the inauguration, they had not spoken. Miguel had returned to Recife the next day, leaving behind only the echo of his accusations and a broken maternal heart. "Have you tried talking to him?" Gabriel asked softly. Helena sighed, wiping her hands on her apron. "I've sent messages, emails. He reads them but doesn't respond. My parents say he's confused, that he needs time, but each day of silence hurts more than the last." Gabriel moved his chair closer, feeling the need to close the physical distance between them. He'll come back. When he's ready. When he understands. That life isn't as simple as it seems at 16. "What if I'm wrong?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if by pursuing this dream I'm only proving him right? That I chose ambition over him?" "Helena," Gabriel called, waiting until she looked him in the eye. "You spent years working in other people's bakeries, saving every penny, perfecting your recipes. This place isn't about ambition, it's about survival, about creating something of your own. Your son will understand that one day." She nodded slightly, turning her attention back to the brigadiers. The silence that followed was comfortable, filled only by the soft sound of the rain beginning to fall outside. "How do you do that?" she asked suddenly. "What is this? It makes me feel like everything is going to be okay, even when it feels like the world is falling apart." Gabriel smiled, a smile that carried his own sadness. "Maybe because I know what it's like to have your world fall apart, and I know that somehow we always find a way to rebuild." It was at that moment that Helena noticed something different about him. There was a subtle tension in his shoulders, a shadow in his gaze that hadn't been there before. "Something's up, hasn't it?" she asked, her keen intuition picking up on the subtle signs. Gabriel hesitated. He hadn't planned on telling her, not yet. But there was something about that moment, in the intimacy of that kitchen surrounded by the sound of the rain, that begged for the truth. "I had some routine tests last week," he began, his voice controlled. "The condition affecting my leg is progressing. The doctors say that in a few months it may start to affect my speech, my fine motor skills." The brigadeiro that Helena was modeling slipped from her hands, rolling across the counter. She ignored it, all her attention focused on Gabriel. "But there is treatment, right? Some surgery, therapy?" "There are palliative options," he replied with a calm he didn't feel. "But it's degenerative, progressive, irreversible." Helena walked around the counter, approaching him. Without saying a word, she took his hands in hers. They were cold, stained with chocolate and trembling slightly. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because here, with you in this kitchen, it's the only place where I can pretend nothing has changed, where I can just be Gabriel, not the sick Alan heir." The tears Helena had been holding back since Miguel's mention finally spilled over, but now for a different reason. "You were never just the Alan heir to me." Gabriel squeezed her hands, anchoring himself in that contact. "I know. That's why." He didn't finish the sentence, but he didn't need to. Helena could see in his eyes everything he couldn't say. The fear of the future, the anger at his own fragility, the gratitude for having found someone who saw him beyond his condition. The rain outside intensified, creating a curtain of water that isolated the kitchen from the rest of the world. The aroma of freshly made brigadeiros filled the air, mixing with the scent of the rain that came in through the half-open windows. "Do you know what we're going to do?" Helena finally said, wiping her tears with the back of her hands. "We're going to finish these brigadeiros, and then you're going to help me plan these baking classes, because tomorrow the sun will rise again, and we need to be ready to welcome the students, share stories, create memories." Even with everything going wrong, especially with everything going wrong, she smiled, that smile that had the power to brighten even the darkest days. Because that's how we prove them wrong, by living, by creating, by resisting, one brigadeiro at a time. Gabriel watched as she walked back behind the counter, resuming her work with the pastries. There was a strength about her that went beyond the physical, a resilience that came not from the absence of fear, but from the ability to move forward in spite of it. "Teach me," he asked, surprising them both. What? Making brigadeiro. While I can still use my hands, I want to learn. Helena swallowed the lump that formed in her throat. Sure, come here. She guided his hands through the process, teaching him how to feel the dough and how to shape the balls with precision. It wasn't easy. His hands sometimes shook, and some brigadeiros came out crooked. But every small victory was celebrated. Every mistake transformed into a learning experience. The afternoon progressed like this, between chocolate and nervous laughter, between whispered confessions and unspoken promises. Outside, São Paulo continued its frenetic pace, oblivious to the small miracle that was happening in that kitchen. Two broken people learning that sometimes you have to fall apart completely to discover how to rebuild yourself. The pastry classes began on a rainy Monday in January. Helena had transformed the bakery's mezzanine into a small teaching space, with workbenches and a whiteboard where she wrote down the recipes. The first class was small, 6 students, including Donna Julia from the flower shop and 2 teenagers from the social project she had started. Gabriel attended classes whenever he could, sitting discreetly in a corner, watching Helena in her element. She was a natural teacher, patient and passionate, sharing not only techniques but stories behind each recipe. Her eyes would sparkle when she talked about the origins of the ingredients, about the families who had been producing the cocoa she used for generations, about how each sweet treat carried a piece of Brazilian history. It was during one of these classes that the first sign of trouble appeared. Gabriel was trying to take notes, a task that became increasingly difficult as his condition progressed, when his phone vibrated. With an urgent message from the group's legal department. "We need to talk," he said to Helena after class, when the last student had left. His voice was strained, and his hands gripped the arms of his chair tighter than necessary. Helena immediately recognized the seriousness in his tone. "I'll make some coffee." They settled onto the back porch, their usual retreat. Coffee steamed in the cups, and the late afternoon sun painted the sky in shades of pink and orange. Any other time, it would have been a perfect scene. "There was a problem with the trademark registration," Gabriel began, his words heavy as lead. "When we made the loan agreement, a bureaucratic error linked the bakery's name to the Allen Group." Helena frowned, not fully understanding. "And that's bad?" "The new CEO of the group, Ricardo Torres, wants to use this against us. He is filing a lawsuit alleging improper use of the brand and trying to regain control of the establishment." The blood drained from Helena's face. But you're the chairman of the board. Can't you stop this?" Gabriel ran his hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she rarely saw from him. "Torres has the support of a significant portion of the shareholders. He is using my health condition to question my leadership ability. This attack on the bakery is just part of a larger strategy to remove me from command." Helena slumped back in her chair, her mind processing the implications. All her work, her dreams, her new beginning, all of it was threatened by a bureaucratic error and corporate power plays. "What can we do?" "Legally, not much. The registration error was real," Gabriel admitted. "But I'm working on some alternatives. I need you to trust me." Helena studied him for a moment. There was something in his eyes, a fierce determination that contrasted with his growing physical fragility. "I always have," she replied simply. The silence that followed was interrupted by the sound of footsteps on the stairs. It was Carlos, one of Helena's suppliers, carrying boxes of ingredients for the next day. "Let me help," Helena offered, standing up. "No need," Carlos replied curtly. "I don't want any more favors from the rich." Helena stopped, stunned by the unexpected hostility. "What?" Carlos set the boxes down with more force than necessary. "Everyone already knows, Helena, how you sold your soul to the Allen Group, how you betrayed the neighborhood's trust." "What are you talking about?" From the lawsuit, he practically spat the words. "It's all over the online newspapers. Confeitaria da Liberdade, case of cultural and corporate appropriation. Your son was right about you." Helena staggered as if she had been slapped. Gabriel moved his chair forward, wanting to intervene, but Carlos was already leaving only the echo of his accusations and the bitter smell of betrayal. The ingredients, Helena murmured, looking at the boxes as if she had only just noticed them. They were the last of the special stock. Carlos is the only supplier in the area who... Her voice cracked, and Gabriel saw the exact moment the reality of the situation hit her. This wasn't just about a lawsuit or a business name. It was about trust, about belonging, about the delicate social fabric she had worked so hard to build. "I'm sorry," Gabriel said, his voice thick with guilt. "I should have seen this coming. I should have been more careful with the documentation." Helena turned to him, and there was a new strength in her gaze. "No, don't apologize. You gave me a chance when no one else would. You offered me this space without asking for anything in return. If anyone is trying to turn this into something dirty, that's their problem, not ours." She walked to the window, watching the movement of the street below. The Liberdade neighborhood was alive as always, with its red lanterns swaying in the evening breeze, people returning home after a long day of work. "Do you know what we're going to do?" she said, turning to Gabriel. "We're going to fight, our way." "As?" "Tomorrow is baking class. Let's keep the doors open. Let's keep teaching, sharing, building bridges. And while you're dealing with the legal stuff, I'm going to prove to every single person in this neighborhood that this place isn't about power or money. It's about community." Gabriel watched in awe as she began to unpack the ingredients, arranging them methodically on the shelves. Even with her hands shaking slightly, even with her eyes brimming with tears, she maintained the dignity that had captured his attention. From the first moment. "Helena," he called softly. She stopped, a can of condensed milk in her hands. "Yes. You're extraordinary, you know. Savist." A small smile played on her lips, the first since the bad news had arrived. "No, I'm just too stubborn to give up." Night fell over São Paulo, enveloping the bakery in soft shadows. Outside, headlines continued to circulate, fueling heated discussions on social media. Somewhere in the city, Ricardo Torres was probably toasting his first victory in this corporate war. But there, in that kitchen that smelled of chocolate and hope, two people hurt by life planned their resistance. Not with screams or protests, but with brigadeiros and cakes, with classes and smiles, with the silent certainty that sometimes love, whether for a dream, for a place, or for someone, is the most powerful form of revolution. The following weeks brought a silent war that unfolded on several fronts. While lawyers exchanged documents and petitions, Helena fought her own battle in the day-to-day running of the bakery. The lack of local suppliers forced her to wake up, even earlier, to source ingredients from other neighborhoods. Some old customers left, influenced by the bad publicity, but others remained loyal, bringing in new customers through word of mouth. The pastry classes continued, now with a waiting list. Helena had adapted the program to include traditional recipes from the neighborhood, inviting old local pastry chefs to share their knowledge. It was her way of showing respect for local history, of proving that pastry was not there to erase the past, but to add to it. Gabriel, meanwhile, was facing his own struggles. The disease was progressing faster than expected, making it increasingly difficult to hide the symptoms. His hands were shaking more frequently, and his speech would occasionally falter in mid-sentence. But it was at board meetings that his battle became most evident. "We need to discuss your succession, Gabriel," Ricardo Torres declared during one such meeting, his voice falsely concerned. "Your condition is clearly affecting your leadership ability. The bakery case is just one example of questionable decisions." Gabriel felt the eyes of the other councillors on him, some with genuine concern, others barely hiding their ambition to take his place. His response came slowly, each word carefully articulated so as not to show weakness. "My physical condition does not affect my judgment, Torres, and if you are so concerned about questionable decisions, perhaps we should discuss your latest moves in the Asian market." The veiled threat did not go unnoticed. Torres knew that Gabriel had information about shady dealings, evidence that could compromise not only his position in the group, but his reputation in the market. The tension in the room was palpable when Helena called. Gabriel rarely took calls during board meetings, but something in his instinct made him make an exception. "Gabriel," her voice was choked. "Miguel is here." He quickly apologized to the board and left the room, ignoring Torres's protests. The driver took him to the bakery in record time, through the chaotic São Paulo traffic. He found Helena and Miguel sitting on the back porch. The teenager was thinner than last time, with dark circles under his eyes that betrayed sleepless nights. Helena's eyes were red, but she had a shy smile on her lips. "Sorry to interrupt your meeting," she said when she saw him. "You never interrupt," he replied softly before turning to Miguel. "Hello." The boy studied him for a moment, his eyes registering the tremors in his hands, the pallor of his face. "You are ill." It wasn't a question, but Gabriel answered anyway. "Yes, it's progressive. And yet you continue to fight for the confectionery?" "No," Gabriel corrected. "I'm still fighting for your mother's right to have her own space, to pursue her dreams without corporate interference." Miguel absorbed the information in silence, his fingers playing with a paper napkin. "I saw the classes she's teaching. The people in the neighborhood, they speak well of the project." Helena held her breath, waiting. It was the closest thing to approval her son had shown her since the beginning of it all. "Why did you come back, son?" she asked softly. Miguel took a while to answer, as if he was organizing his thoughts. "Grandpa had a heart attack last week." "My God," Helena paled. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "Because I asked them not to tell me," he admitted. I wanted to come in person. See how you were. Get a better understanding of things." The tears Helena had been holding back began to fall. "How is he?" "It's okay now. It was minor. They caught it in time. But do you know what he told me at the hospital?" Miguel finally looked his mother in the eyes. "He said his biggest regret was letting me grow up with so much hurt, that you didn't abandon anyone, you just did what you had to do to survive." The silence that followed was heavy with pent-up emotion. Gabriel watched the scene with a heavy heart, feeling simultaneously like Anne, intruder and a crucial witness to that moment of reconciliation. "I never meant to hurt you," Helena said between sobs. "Everything I did, every choice, every sacrifice, was with the goal of giving you a better future." Miguel stood up, taking a few steps across the porch before turning to his mother. "I know. Now I know, and I'm sorry about the video, about the protest. I was angry, confused. I thought you had changed, that you had sold out. But then I started following from afar. I saw the classes you're teaching, how you're helping the community." He stopped, swallowing hard. "I saw you fighting for your dream without losing who you are, and I realized that maybe I was unfair." Helena stood up too, taking a hesitant step towards her son. When he didn't back away, she wrapped him in a tight hug, decades of absence and longing condensed in that gesture. Gabriel was watching the scene when his phone vibrated. It was a message from his lawyer. Torres had obtained an injunction freezing the bakery's accounts. It was a low blow calculated to suffocate the establishment financially. But looking at mother and son embracing, Gabriel felt a certainty he had not experienced in a long time. Some battles were worth any sacrifice, and as he watched Helena whisper words of love and forgiveness in her son's ear, he made his decision. The war with Torres would have to wait. At that moment, on that balcony that had witnessed so many crucial moments, the most important thing was to protect this small miracle that was unfolding before his eyes. Because sometimes, Gabriel realized, the greatest victories come not from corporate battles or court decisions, but from hearts that find to their way back home. The news of the frozen accounts hit the bakery like a silent storm. Helena received the news with the same dignity with which she had faced all other obstacles, but Gabriel could see the fear in her eyes. Without access to resources, how would she pay her employees? How would she buy the ingredients for the classes? That had become so important to the community. Miguel, who had decided to spend a few weeks in São Paulo, was the first to propose a solution. "Let's do an online fundraiser," he suggested over an impromptu dinner in the bakery's kitchen. "I can use my social media contacts and tell the real story of the place." Helena shook her head, picking absently at her plate of food. "I don't want to expose anyone else to this fight. Especially you, son. Your life in Recife, your studies. Mum. Miguel interrupted her with surprising firmness. I've spent years judging you for your choices. Now I want to be part of the solution. Gabriel watched the interaction between mother and son with a mixture of admiration and concern. Their relationship was like a delicate cake batter, starting to grow, but still needing time and care to reach the right point. There's something else you need to know, Gabriel said, his voice hoarser than usual. The new medication he was taking had this side effect. Torres has scheduled a special board meeting for next week. He's going to try to remove me from the presidency for good. Helena dropped her fork, the clang echoing in the silent kitchen. He can't do that. Legally he can. My condition is worsening faster than expected, and he has enough support from the other counselors. And you're going to let me? Miguel asked, his voice carrying a youthful indignation that was very reminiscent of Helena's. Gabriel smiled sadly. It's not about leaving or not. It's about choosing the right battles. That was when Helena stood up abruptly, beginning to pull ingredients from the shelves, flour, sugar, chocolate. Her hands moved with purpose as if she were performing a family ritual. What are you doing? Gabriel asked, confused. Corn cake, she replied without stopping her movements. Because when everything seems to be falling apart, we need to remember why we started. Miguel and Gabriel watched in silence as she worked. There was something almost hypnotic about the way her hands moved, mixing ingredients with the precision of someone who knew every step of the process, not just in their mind, but in their soul. Do you know why this cake is so special? She asked as she kneaded the batter. It's not just because of Grandma's recipe. It's because it was the first dessert I learned to make on my own, when I found out I was pregnant. I was 19 years old, very scared, and had no idea what to do with my life, but every time I made this cake, I felt like I could face anything. Miguel approached the bench, his eyes fixed on his mother's hands. Teach me? Helena paused for a moment, looking at her son as if she were seeing him for the first time. Then she smiled, that smile that had the power to brighten even the darkest days. Come here, she called, making room on the counter. The first thing you need to know is that it's not just about following the recipe. It's about getting the feel for the right consistency. Gabriel watched the scene with a lump in his throat, mother and son side by side, flour on their faces, laughing at small mistakes and celebrating small successes. It was an image he wanted to keep forever, a moment of perfection amidst the chaos that their lives had become. It was then that the idea began to form in his mind. It wouldn't be easy, and it would certainly cause more problems with Torres and the council. But looking at Helena and Miguel, at the genuine joy on their faces as they shared this precious moment, he knew it was the right decision. Helena, he called softly, I need you to trust me one last time. She turned to him, her hands still in the dough. I always have. Tomorrow I'm going to make a transfer. The mansion, the brand, everything will be transferred to your name, legally, definitively. But won't that make things worse with Torres? Probably, he admitted, but it doesn't matter. This place, this dream, it's yours. It always has been. I just helped plant the seed. Miguel watched the interaction with interest. Why are you doing this? Why do you care so much? Gabriel looked at the boy, seeing in him the same strength and determination that he so admired in Helena. Because sometimes life gives us second chances disguised as challenges. Your mother showed me that it is possible to start over, that it is possible to maintain dignity, even when the world seems to conspire against you. And now it is my turn to ensure that this new beginning is protected. Helena put down the cake batter, her hands shaking slightly. Gabriel. No, he interrupted her gently. Don't say anything. Just finish teaching your son how to make that cake, because tomorrow we're going to need a lot of strength to face what's coming. The aroma of the cake began to fill the kitchen, mixing with the smell of rain coming in through the window. Outside, São Paulo continued its frenetic pace, oblivious to the small miracle that was happening in that kitchen, a family reconnecting, a love growing silently, and a man discovering that sometimes the greatest victories come not from maintaining control, but from knowing when it is time to let go. Miguel put a hand on his mother's shoulder, a simple gesture but full of meaning. "Everything will be okay, Mum, one way or another we'll make it." Helena nodded, wiping away a stubborn tear with the back of her hand. "I know, son, I know." And there, in that kitchen that smelled of corn and chocolate, hope seemed as tangible as the cake batter rising in the oven. Because sometimes in the darkest moments, all we need is to remember the taste of simple things, the warmth of a long-delayed hug, and the certainty that, as long as there is love and courage, there will always be a path forward. News of the transfer of ownership exploded like a bomb in São Paulo's business circles. Ricardo Torres, as expected, reacted with fury, calling an emergency board meeting. But Gabriel had been smarter. All the documentation was impeccable, every detail meticulously planned to ensure that the transfer was irrevocable. "Are you crazy?" Torres shouted in the meeting room. "Transferring a group asset to a pastry chef from Brass?" Gabriel remained calm, even as his voice cracked slightly. "The property has been recorded as a loss on our balance sheets for years, and technically, as chairman of the board, I still have the authority to—" "For now," Torres interrupted with a cruel smile, "but not for long. The council will vote on your removal today." That was when the door to the room opened, and Helena walked in. She was different, no longer the hesitant baker from their first meeting, but a woman who had discovered her own strength. Miguel followed her, carrying a folder of documents. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice firm, "but I think the councillors need to see this before any vote." Torres laughed mockingly. "And who do you think you are to—" "She's the one who has proof of your irregular dealings in Asia," Miguel added, starting to distribute copies of documents around the table, including the deposits in offshore accounts and the inflated contracts. The silence that followed was deafening. The councillors leafed through the documents with expressions ranging from shock to concern. Torres had gone pale. How? Did you manage that?" he stammered. It was Gabriel who answered, a small smile on his lips. "Let's just say that while you were busy trying to bring me down, I was busy protecting the future of the group and the bakery." Helena approached the table, her eyes fixed on Torres. "I didn't come here to cause trouble. I came because I believe that sometimes we need to face our fears head-on. You tried to destroy something that I built with so much love, so much dedication. Why?" The question caught Torres off guard. For a moment, his mask of arrogance fell, revealing something surprisingly human. "Because people like you shouldn't have so much power," he replied bitterly. "People who started from nothing, who don't understand the rules of the game." "Or maybe," Miguel interjected, "that's precisely why people like my mother should have more power, because they understand the real value of things, not just their market value." Gabriel watched the scene with a mixture of pride and admiration. Helena and Miguel, mother and son, united not only by blood ties, but by a deep understanding of what really mattered in life. "The vote is cancelled," one of the senior councillors declared, standing up, "and I suggest that Mr. Torres prepare his letter of resignation by the end of the day." Torres left the room like a wounded animal, leaving behind only the echo of his frustrated ambitions. The other councillors followed him, some stopping to shake Helena's hand, others simply nodding in silent acknowledgement. When they were alone, Helena finally let her legs give out, leaning against the table. "I can't believe we did it." "You did it," Gabriel corrected gently. "I only gave you the tools. The strength was always in you." Miguel watched the scene with a new understanding. The way his mother and Gabriel looked at each other, the affection contained in each gesture, the mutual understanding that went beyond words. "You know," he said, breaking the moment, "I think I understand now." "Understand what?" Helena asked. "Why did you choose to fight so hard for that bakery? It's not just for the space or the work, it's for what it represents, the possibility of creating something of your own, something true." Helena smiled, pulling her son into a hug. "And also for the possibility of having you back in my life." Gabriel watched the scene when a new wave of tremors hit him, stronger than the previous ones. Helena noticed immediately, letting go of Miguel and running to his side. "We need to get you to the doctor," she said, worried. "No," he replied with difficulty. "Not today. Today I want to celebrate with you." "But, please," he insisted, "just take me to the bakery. I want to smell your sweets one more time." Helena and Miguel exchanged worried glances but agreed. The journey to Liberdade was made in silence, each one lost in their own thoughts. The bakery was closed that day, but the windows let in the golden light of the late afternoon, creating dancing shadows on the walls. The scent of sugar and chocolate still hung in the air, mixed with something else. Maybe hope, maybe a new beginning. "You know what I love most about this place?" Gabriel said, as Helena helped him settle into his favorite chair on the porch. "It's not the pastries, although they are wonderful. It's how you transformed an empty space into something full of life. How you weren't afraid to be exactly who you are." Helena knelt beside his chair, holding his trembling hand. "And you gave me that chance, even when everyone said it was crazy." "No," he smiled, even as his voice cracked again. "You already had it all inside you. I was lucky enough to be around to see you shine." Miguel watched the scene from the doorway, feeling simultaneously like an intruder and an essential part of that moment. It was strange to see his mother like that, so vulnerable and strong at the same time. It was strange to realize that sometimes love came disguised as other things: a loan agreement, a knocked-over tray, a shared cornbread. The sun was setting over São Paulo, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. In the silent bakery, 3 people who had been hurt by life discovered that sometimes the greatest victories don't come from great battles, but from small moments of courage, from choosing to love, even when it hurts, from forgiving, even when it seems impossible, from moving forward even when the path seems uncertain. The weeks that followed brought profound changes for everyone. Torres's departure from the Allen Group led to a complete restructuring of the board, with Gabriel retaining his position on the board, albeit with reduced responsibilities due to the progression of his illness. The bakery, now legally and wholly owned by Helena, flourished under her dedicated management. Miguel decided to stay in São Paulo. He transferred his enrollment to a local school and began dividing his time between studying and helping out at the bakery. His presence brought a new energy to the place. Fresh ideas, a young vision that attracted a different audience. He started a social media project, documenting not only the sweets but the stories behind them, the people who frequented the space, the vibrant life of the neighborhood. One particularly busy afternoon, Helena found her son organizing a photography exhibition on the mezzanine. The images captured moments of everyday life: Donna Julia arranging flowers at the entrance, students in the pastry workshops proud of their creations, longtime residents of the neighborhood sharing stories over afternoon coffee. "When did you learn to photograph like this?" she asked, admiring a particularly touching photo of Gabriel teaching a child how to make brigadeiros, his trembling hands guiding the little ones with infinite patience. "Grandpa taught me," Miguel replied, adjusting the frame of one of the photos. "He always said that life is made up of moments, and that some are too precious to trust only to memory." Helena felt her heart tighten. Her father, after the heart attack scare, had become a staunch supporter of the bakery. He sent her old family recipes, called to give advice, and most importantly, he had helped Miguel understand and accept the choices she had made in the past. "You know what else he told me?" Miguel continued, turning to face his mother. "That you're the bravest person." "He knows, and I agree." Helena could not hold back her tears. She hugged her son, feeling how much he had grown, not just physically, but in understanding, in maturity, in love. "Mom," he murmured against her hair, "I think Gabriel is getting worse." She pulled away slightly, wiping away her tears. No, the doctors said the process is speeding up. Have you told him about the invitation yet?" Helena shook her head. A prestigious pastry school in Paris had contacted her, offering her a place on a special 3-month program. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, something she had always dreamed of. "I can't go," she said simply. "Not now." Why not? The bakery is established. I can help take care of everything, and... It's not about the bakery, Miguel. It's about love, he finished softly. You love him, don't you? Helena closed her eyes, letting the truth of those words hit her with full force. Yes, she loved Gabriel. She loved his silent strength, his discreet generosity. The way he saw her, not as a baker from brass, not as a mother who abandoned her son, but as she really was, with all her complexities and contradictions. He needs to know, Miguel insisted, about love and about Paris. What for? To make everything more difficult? No, he took his mother's hands in his, to give him one more reason to fight, to show him that even with everything that's happening, life continues to offer possibilities. Helena looked at the photo of Gabriel with the child, at the genuine joy on his face despite the evident pain in his gestures. He never complained, never let his illness define who he was. He continued to visit the bakery almost daily, attending classes when he could, being a constant and loving presence in her life. What if he asks me to stay? She whispered, her biggest worry. He won't, Miguel replied with wisdom beyond his years, because he loves you the same way you love him, wanting your happiness above all else. The sound of a wheelchair going up the mezzanine ramp interrupted the conversation. Gabriel appeared paler than usual, but with that smile that made Helena's heart skip a beat. Sorry to interrupt, he said, his voice huskier than usual, but I needed to see these pictures everyone's talking about. Miguel quickly began to show them around the exhibit, explaining each image with enthusiasm. Helena watched the two of them, her son and the man she loved, feeling a bittersweet mix of joy and fear. How could she tell them that she had received another email from Paris that morning, urging a definitive answer? Gabriel stopped in front of the photo of him and the child, his eyes softening at the memory. You have talent, Miguel. You managed to capture something beyond the image. Hope, the boy replied. That's what I wanted to show. How this place is more than a bakery. Lamas, it's a place of hope. Helena felt tears come back to her eyes. Hope. That was what Gabriel had given her from the very first moment, from that tray that had been knocked over at dinner. Hope to start over, to dream, to love again. Gabriel, she called softly, making her decision. We need to talk. The afternoon sun streamed in through the mezzanine windows, creating a play of light and shadow that seemed to dance over the photographs. Miguel discreetly walked away, leaving them alone with their unspoken truths, their fears, and their dreams. Because sometimes, he had learned, love needs both words and silence to fully blossom. The conversation about Paris took place right there, on the mezzanine floor of the bakery, amidst photographs that told its story and the familiar aroma of freshly baked pastries. Helena explained everything, the program, the unique opportunity, her fear of leaving. Gabriel listened to her in silence, his eyes never leaving hers even when his hands were shaking more than usual. You have to go, he said finally, his voice hoarse but firm. It's your dream. But your condition? It's getting worse. He finished for her. And that's exactly why you need to go. I don't want to be the reason you stop living your life to the fullest. Helena knelt beside his chair, holding his trembling hands in hers. I love you, she said simply, the words spilling out as if they had a life of their own. And I'm so afraid of losing you. Gabriel smiled, that smile that had captured her heart from the first moment. You will never lose me, even if one day I can no longer speak, even if my body continues to betray me. What we have goes beyond that. 3 months later, Helena was at Guarulhos airport, her heart torn between anticipation and the pain of saying goodbye. Miguel was by her side, taller and more mature than ever. He had decided to stay in São Paulo, living with Gabriel and helping to run the bakery while he was away. Take care of him for me, she asked her son, adjusting the strap of her bag for the 1000th time. Always, Miguel promised, hugging her tightly. And take care of yourself too. Enjoy every moment. Learn everything you can. We're waiting for you here. Gabriel watched the scene from his chair, his eyes shining with unshed tears. His condition had worsened considerably in the last few weeks. His speech was more difficult, his movements more limited, but he had insisted on coming to the airport, on seeing Helena off with the certainty that he was doing the right thing. "Come here," he called, his voice barely above a whisper. Helena knelt before him one last time, memories of all their moments together, flashing through her mind like a movie. The dinner where they met, their first visit to the abandoned mansion, the pastry classes, the afternoons on the balcony, every precious moment kept in her heart. "I love you," he said, the words coming out thickly but full of truth. "And I'll be here when you come back. Maybe not in the same way, but I'll be here. Promise? I promise. Now go before I lose the courage to let you go." The last call for the flight echoed through the terminal. Helena stood up, wiping away her tears. She hugged Miguel once more, kissed Gabriel softly on the lips, and walked toward her destination without looking back. She knew that if she did, her resolve might falter. The weeks in Paris passed like a dream. Helena absorbed each new technique, each secret shared by the master pastry chefs, transforming her longing into creativity. Every night she and Gabriel talked via video call. Sometimes he could barely speak, but his eyes said everything that his words could no longer express. Miguel kept the bakery running with surprising dedication. Under his management, the space became even more integrated into the community. Classes continued, now with him sharing some of the recipes he had learned from his mother. The photographs on the mezzanine were updated regularly, telling the ever-evolving story of the place. It was during one of these video calls, just 2 weeks before her return, that Helena noticed something different about Gabriel. He was quieter than usual, his eyes carrying a weight she knew well. "What's wrong?" she asked, her heart pounding even across the ocean. "The doctors," he began, his voice breaking. Miguel, who was standing next to him, finished for him. "The disease has reached the respiratory system. They don't know how long." Helena felt the world spin. Her first reaction was to want to go back immediately, to abandon everything. But both Gabriel and Miguel insisted that she complete the program. "You'll come back," Gabriel said with difficulty. "And you'll make me the best cornbread Paris has ever seen." 2 weeks later, Helena landed in Guarulhos with 2 suitcases full of new techniques and a heart overflowing with love and fear. Miguel was waiting for her alone at the landing. "He's at the bakery," his son explained as he picked up his bags. He insisted on waiting there. The journey to Libertad never seemed so long. When they finally arrived, Helena found the bakery decorated with flowers, certainly Donna Julia's work. And there was Gabriel in his wheelchair, more fragile than ever, but with that same smile that had changed his life. "Welcome back," he said softly, his voice barely audible. Helena ran to him, kneeling beside him as she had done so many times. Before, there was no need for words. Her eyes said everything their hearts already knew. "I brought you something," she said, taking a small package out of her purse. "The first sweet I learned to make in Paris, but you know what? No French sweet comes close to our cornbread." Gabriel laughed, a weak but genuine sound. "So what are you waiting for? We have an entire kitchen at your disposal." And so, on that spring afternoon in São Paulo, Helena returned to her kitchen. With Miguel helping and Gabriel watching, she prepared the cake that had marked so many important moments in their lives. The familiar aroma filled the air, bringing with it memories of all the moments they had shared. They didn't know how much longer they would have together. Gabriel's illness was progressing inexorably, stealing a little more of his strength each day. But there, in that bakery that had become a home for so many dreams and new beginnings, they had everything that really mattered: love, family, and the certainty that some flavors are eternal, just as some loves are too strong to be measured in time. Miguel watched his parents, because that was how he saw Gabriel now, sharing that precious moment. In his hands, his camera captured another instant for his collection of photographs, another love story to tell through his lens. Because in the end, he had learned, that's what life is made of. Not the big moments, but the small, daily miracles. The aroma of a cornbread, the smile of someone we love, the courage to start over even when the future is uncertain. And in the bakery kitchen, between soft laughter and barely contained tears, three hearts beat in tune, united by something stronger than time, deeper than distance, more lasting than any illness. Love in its purest and truest form. A love with the flavor of cornbread, with the aroma of a new beginning, with the certainty that, no matter what the future held, they would always have each other and the sweet memories they had built together.